boys, let's go! Gather round the table set, maps and minis, no regret. Heroes rise and villains fall, the dice decide the fate of all. From dungeons deep to cosmic skies, at Danko calls, the flames will rise. Sharpen your swords, prepare the show. It's time to shout, we're ready to go! We're ready to go! Let the story steal the show! Ready to go! Yeah, 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 yeah! Roll for heart and rock the flow! Bards will sing and dragons know the might, the magic, the tales we throw! Ready, not go! When destiny calls and the dice hit the table, the heroes awaken and the nerds are ready. Ready to go! Leopard tails begin to grow! Ready to go! Forge your fate and steal the show! Raise your mugs, let courage flow! Ready to go!
Welcome back to Ready Nerd Go, Graphic Policy's tabletop RPG podcast. We hope you enjoyed that lovely little song that we played as the introduction song. In fairness, we actually haven't fully heard it together yet, but that's the way it's going to go because I added it in post-production. And that makes me sound like I know what I'm doing, but I actually don't.
Yeah, we are very much flying by the seat of our pants here.
Very much. My name's Alex. This is Anko. And we have a topic today, and I'm really interested in it because Anko said about 10 minutes ago, hey, do you want to talk about this? I'm like, yeah, it sounds great. I have no idea what that means.
That's half the fun of this, right?
Well, that's kind of the point, right? Because between the two of us, on the scale of knows about tabletop RPGs and might be able to pick one out in a shop, I'm by far closer to the might be able to pick one out on a shop on a good day.
You got a whole shelf dedicated. It shouldn't be that difficult for you.
It shouldn't be that difficult, but I could do it in our shop, which is thecomichunter.net, available for all of your nerdy shit and needs and stuff. I could do it in our shop, but in other places where they may have them mixed with the board games, like, is this an RPG or is this a board game? Is there a
to be fair,
difference?
to be fair, with some of them, they bleed the line quite a bit between the
Mhm.
two with what's an RPG and what's a board game from both sides of the aisle. Because you got something like Gloomhaven, which is a board game with RPG elements, and then you have, the more the more tactical focused one RPGs, which pretty much require minis and a grid as well. So it's like
It's
all,
kind
all,
of.
all categories are artificial and made up by human beings. It's fine.
Yeah, I mean, you're not entirely wrong because I was thinking of Zombicide, which reminded me more of a an RPG than anything else, just with how you're building a character, except
Yeah.
the character's given to you. So again, like you said, it's almost arbitrary in every way possible.
Yeah, and then there's stuff like oh god, brain's not. There's a few there's a few RPGs that are like, hey, this is your character that you're playing. Have at you don't make your character, and they're still technically RPGs and they're a lot of
Mm.
fun. But anyway, the topic that we're actually planning on talking about, well, I'm
I said,
planning on
"See, that
talking about,
that
Alex is
wasn't the
planning on
topic, was
figuring
it?"
out, not even slightest.
Okay.
So one thing I figured after last episode, I wanted to talk about something a little more positive. So I wanted to talk about bleed in RPGs, which is, I mean, I guess it's mostly can be positive and negative, but I want to talk about the positive aspects because I need something positive in my life right now.
Yeah, and you know what?
So
We're gonna try and be more upbeat, I think, than we have been. Which not that we haven't been, but it's almost too easy to fall on the negative
yeah,
sometimes.
yeah. So before I start explaining this topic, I'm kind of curious, Alex, what do you think when I'm talking about when I say
Now,
bleed?
up until just now, when we were talking about elements bleeding into each other, I was assuming it meant some kind of damage modifier. Now, perhaps I played too many video games where bleed is, like Elden Ring, where bleed is a
I
damage modifier. I'm like, how is
mean,
that
fair
possible?
assumption.
I'm sure there's a way. Now I'm beginning to wonder if it's a case of something from World A is bleeding into World B, so then you get what effectively makes World C, which is a combination of the best of both worlds.
So kind of when we're talking about bleed in RPGs, I mean, people have used a few different terms for it, but the term I've always used is bleed because that's what I grew up with. Is when you're like when like you start feeling like what your character is feeling in the game is essentially what bleed is. Like, when you're role playing like a really heavy emotional moment and you start to actually feel those emotions yourself, that's
Hmm.
bleed. And
That's really interesting.
that can be positive emotions, that can be negative emotions. It's kind of similar. It's actually pretty much the exact same thing, just on a lesser scale, as like when you hear about like actors that get really into their part and like need time to like get back to who they really are afterwards, just because they've been so into that mindset of who their character is. It's functionally the same thing.
It's a form of method acting without the official training. I'm
Yeah.
sure it's what method actors fall into. Only the difference is they know that they're doing it, and if you're bleeding in on a in a game, you may not recognize that. Wait, why am I so angry at this? I know my character should be angry, but why am I so full of rage right now?
Yep. It's doesn't happen to everybody, and for the people it does happen to, it'll happen in different like amounts. And there's definitely healthy and unhealthy levels of bleed. Like, it's one thing to like, man, like I really got into that and I really felt it, and and then there's like, hey, I'm really angry at the GM right now because like, this NPC did something that made me angry and now I'm pissed off at you. It's like, no, that's not.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's not no, that's not the way it goes.
it's actually kind of similar to method acting in that way, and why method acting's got such a bad reputation, because you have actors that are just like, oh yeah, I'm playing a prick, so I'm just gonna be a prick to everybody, and it's like, no, 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 no.
Yeah, I find that's difficult because I know I've read with take Daniel Day Lewis as an example.
Hmm.
There have been people that have been on films with him and have said we never met the real Daniel Day Lewis. However, the character he was playing was a very nice guy when the cameras weren't rolling, and
Yeah,
that's
no,
totally fair. But
yeah,
yeah,
it's kind of fun because like for a lot of people, especially people who are more into the like story focused style RPGs, like the Powered by the Apocalypse stuff is kind of ideal for how that work. I'm not going to say ideal, like it more heavily leans towards like like stuff like Fate, where how your character, like who your character is, matters a lot more than like I have a +5 to attack, which
yeah.
both styles are fine, but for purposes of like people who enjoy that type of bleed, the more like character focused RPGs tend to work a lot better for them because you can
Hmm.
kind of sit in your character more.
And I would
And I
assume
know,
that. a longer session would benefit that
Oh yeah.
more than a couple, 3 or 4 hours. You would almost want an after like a minimum of a 5 hour session to really get into that and start to really feel it.
Yeah, like it's from my personal experience, you do need a minimum amount of session time to get into, and that's kind of just for RPGs in general. I don't tend to find you can get much of anything done in like a 2 hour session, regardless of what style of play you're doing. But I know for players who want to experience like that type of bleed and like really get into their character, I find that the biggest attribute that matters more is actually party size.
Ah,
And
interesting.
and I know we've mentioned this a bit before in one of the earlier episodes, but like for me, I tend to prefer my parties to be like 3 to 4 players,
Yeah.
because for me that's that sweet spot between there's enough different personalities in the mix that they can play off of each other, and like it's not just two people talking back and forth and trying to make things work, but there's also not so many people that you're sitting there twiddling your thumbs waiting for your turn in the limelight to come back around.
Yeah, I understand that a larger party size can be, it has its drawbacks, but it also has its benefits depending on what you're doing. So
Yeah.
I think it's like anything, right? Like when you're into that type of game, you want to say, all right, what size party do I have? Okay, I have this many people, so I probably don't want to play a game where this is the main focus. If may as well be more action orientated than anything
e-
else.
exactly. But it's an interesting one, because on one hand, with larger parties, playing more crunchy games is difficult, just because if your turn takes half an hour to do and there's 7 people, then like,
Yeah,
but on
that's
the other
that's
hand, the
everyone gets one
yeah,
turn at that point, right?
yeah, and we've had that happen before. Not specifically half an hour per person, but we've had, like, I remember a number of years back when we were playing like original Pathfinder, like we would get there, play for a few hours, and we wouldn't get through like half of a fight because there was 7 of us. We were all playing mid to high level characters, and at that point there's so many options and so much stuff going on, and the GM needs to throw so much stuff at you for it to be a challenge that
Mm. I remember when we were
and
playing Lancer, and
yeah.
there was a time that it was happening. We were playing, and I somehow, despite having the least experience of anyone at the table, it came around to my turn. I'm like, I want to do this, and I want to do this, and I want to do this. Can I do it? And you said, yep. I'm like, great. Here are my dice rolls, and it was done. And it was literally a minute, a full minute. And then they
Hmm.
moved to someone else's turn at the end of the round. Like, wait, Alex didn't go. And he said, no, Alex went quite a while ago.
Yeah.
What? Like he knew what he wanted to do, despite not actually paying attention for most of it. He also, at the same time, knew what he wanted to do ahead of his turn.
And as much as I would love to get into a rant about that, I did promise a happier episode this time around, so
Well,
we're going to focus elsewhere.
also true. And the thing is that that kind of thing has its place, and
Mm,
you don't get the necessary level of bleed. I think, or not the
no.
necessary, but you wouldn't get the same amount of bleed in that kind of game as you do in a smaller party size, longer sessions, which is really not what that session is was ever going to be.
Yeah, and I know, like, for me, like everybody that does experience kind of experiences it in their own way, because like it's how you're personally connecting to the
Yeah,
world. But I know, like, for me, where I tend to experience my bleed most often is like whenever we're having like a particularly interesting combat, and not necessarily like oh, like the tactics in this are really cool, but like occasionally I'll get that point where like I'm actually picturing the fight scene like a movie in my head, where it's like, hey,
yeah,
like I'm actually vividly picturing this and vividly involved in it, and I've actually the I used to do a fair amount of creative writing. I don't much anymore, which I really need to get back into. But like the last bouts of creative writing I've done have been entirely almost like transcribing these scenes from a more like novel perspective instead of an RPG perspective, because my brain goes like, man, like I can actually like, picture this not as like the your turn, your turn, your turn, but like as like
as
the
how it would be
chaos of
going.
battle and moving
Yeah,
people moving around. And that's really fun for me, because it's like, hey, I'm actually picturing this, and like it's usually the ones that are happening that have the character moments in the fighting, because like there's you get the combat that's like, okay, I swing, I hit, I swing, I miss, da da da, and then you get the ones that it's like, oh, we're fighting, like, oh my, this character just went down, and like, this character is like really best friend, so he's gonna charge over and attack that, or even though it's not the optimal thing, because like that's what he would do in this situation, and that's
Yep.
where I find it tends to come in more for me, just because like, hey, like the characters are being characters inside of this, they're not just
It,
the pieces we're moving on the board.
I think that's what's so interesting about RPG games because there are, and we've touched on this before, there are two ways to play it. Do you play optimally or do you play the character? And I personally get more out of it when I'm playing the character. Do
Yeah,
I, would it make the most sense for me to go over here and take cover? Absolutely. But my best friend's just been taken down, and there is nothing on this earth that would stop me from trying to help my best friend in this moment. So that's what I'm going to do. Yeah, but now you're both going to die. I don't care. If that's what happens, that's what's going to happen. But this is what this character needs to do. So this is what I'm going to do.
Yeah, and like there's definitely like the line to tread there for me. Like I like to have my characters that can do what they're supposed to do well. Like if I'm playing a character who's supposed to be a medic, I want them to be able to be a very good medic. But I also want the flexibility in the system to be able to make those suboptimal choices where it's like hey, will this is this the best thing to do? Eh, is it, the most interesting thing to do? Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, because I mean, sometimes the best thing and the most interesting thing are totally different, and sometimes
Yeah.
they are one and the same.
Yeah. Like I remember I was talking about this with one of the people in our group last night when we were talking about when we were playing Adventures in Middle Earth, and he doesn't really get many moments to shine all the time in these, but we were in the middle of a combat and his character was like standing on top of this like I can't remember exactly what the structure was, but it was like a drawbridge or a small tower or something. His character was a couple of floors up, and like everybody else was back down fighting on the ground, and this big like I think it was like a warg and a warg rider had come in, and we were like talking like, I mean, like how's he going to get back down to fight this thing? It's like he's fighting with like a halberd, and it's like hey, he's gonna like go down all the steps and get out there, and by the time he does it'll probably be all done, and da 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 da. It's like hey, you know what else you could do? You could just jump off and try to lance him on the way down. And like those type of moments are really cool and stuff like Adventures in Middle Earth, because like that's not the level of fiction that it normally operates, because we were talking about like Lord of the Rings isn't like massive epic moments happening all the time. It's fairly mundane and realistic, punctuated with these like
Yep.
high concept moments. And
Yep.
that was what we pretty much got out of that, because it was him going from like, oh, hey, we're just like doing the relatively mundane grounded fighting that Lord of the Rings is, and then all of a sudden we had this moment where it's like, hey, you can like jump off of this, lance him on the way down. You may mess up horribly and cripple yourself, but imagine what would happen if you didn't and you succeeded on this.
Please tell me
And
he succeeded.
oh, he did it. Like
Okay.
I think he may have actually crit on it if memory serves, and it was like it was perfect, and like he took out that monster in almost one shot, and it was glorious, and we all had a great time with it. But if he had done, quote unquote optimal play, that probably wouldn't have happened, because the
No.
risk for his character was stupid high. And technically speaking, if he had just, gone down the stairs, the rest of us probably could have taken out the monster without, you know,
And
much risk for like a wipe or anything. But
and
that's not
that's
as fun.
fine. Like that's fine. That's definitely a way to go. But again, like these games are meant to be fun. And
Exactly.
if you can justify in the game, would your character do this? Well, yeah, why not? Like if you
Yeah.
can justify it, then there's no reason not to. But if it's a case of his character's afraid of heights, would your character do this? No, but I as a player really want to, but the character there'd be no way he would do it unless an orc pushed him off somehow. Or unless
Yeah.
he
Or like
tried
need to
to dodge
find
and
the
he went off.
need to find the narrative justification for why this would happen.
Exactly, and that can also be half the fun too. Is it? Well, he would not do this, but why might he do this? Is
Yeah.
also just as much fun.
And like I think it was actually last episode that we had mentioned on like the negative side of Bleed, where like when me and my friends were playing that like apocalypse zombie game that was based on us as people,
Yep.
and I had to stop playing because the Bleed, because we were playing as ourselves, like in our hometown, interacting with the people we knew and cared about. The Bleed hit me really hard in a negative way because it was like, hey, this is a zombie apocalypse. We had to discuss beforehand, like, hey, so like we're not like we're just pretending our families are like all okay somewhere else, right? Because like none of us actually like we we want to indulge in like the in like the left behind like, oh cool, we're doing all the cool zombie apocalypse stuff. We don't want to deal with the trauma of all of our family being dead.
Yeah.
Like
It's almost like you want to have it say that they got to the safe zone and you've been sent back for some reason.
yeah, like I'm not even sure we were able to find a decent justification for it. We just kind of hand waved it because like, yeah, no, we need to don't want to spend too much time on this. But like then,
Yeah,
you know,
fair enough.
I care a lot about my friends, and one of and the GM, obviously he doesn't have a player character because he's the one running the game, but he as a person, we were all living together at the time, and I was like, hey, he as a person would still be here, and so need to figure out what to do with him as a character, and he figured, and he like the way he figured it out with like his character, like oh, he got infected and he was slowly starting to turn and all that kind of stuff, and it kind of and it's kind of like my brain's like, nah, yeah, I can't really handle like the idea of one of my friends just like dying and having to kill him right now. Like I can't do that.
Yeah, and that would be I think that would be tough, especially depending on what you're going through outside of the game,
Yeah, there
to
was
have that kind of thing
yeah,
going on. So that makes
yeah,
sense as to why that sort of bleed isn't ideal.
yeah, because like and like that's and we had also that's also a kind of like talking about we had mentioned too about people who use like RPGs as therapy. That's essentially I don't want to say weaponizing bleed, but that's utilizing bleed to if you're doing it on purpose, a positive effect. If you're forcing other people to deal with it on you, a negative effect.
Yeah, I was gonna say like I know that there's we've touched on weaponized therapy before. I don't know where weaponized therapy came from, but I know we've touched on it before, and that can be a downside of bleed. But I think in some cases, there's definitely an argument for I didn't even realize I was doing it, but now I feel a hell of a lot better because of it.
Oh yeah, I mean, heck, one of my characters, getting a little personal, but one of my characters when we were playing Hell's Rebels, like the character I was playing, I was like, hey, I want to try playing an evil character for this. I normally hate playing this type of character, but I'm going to give it a shot, see how it goes. And like the narrative justification was that like, hey, he was like a lawful evil character, owed a life debt to a good member of the party, and he was pretty much there helping them to satisfy this life debt. And then
Mm.
it was like, hey, as soon as this is done, I'm out of here and fuck y'all.
I like that
But then
logic. Like that's a good
yeah,
way to get a lawful evil character in. Is that yeah, he owes a debt.
yeah, it's like Kyoto Det, and he was a very like he was a worshiper of like the devil god of like contracts. So like he was like satisfying contracts was a very important thing to him, and it was like, yeah, he had this contract to fulfill. That's why he was here, even though he doesn't actually like all these people and he kind of wants them to fail. But you know, if they
He's
fail,
doing the
then
best.
yeah,
The
but
contract
if
fails.
they yeah. But yeah, and the contract fails, he isn't able to fulfill his life debt, and the core part of his religion is just kind of gotten shot in the face. So I was like, yeah, no, well, I'll be here and I'll take care of it. But then like the character that healed this life debt to, like we rescued her husband from prison. This character got pregnant, and then eventually that character retired with their child, and my character kind of got started. It's hey, it's like it's really exploring like what it's like getting attached to like, hey, this child that they weren't expecting in their life got really attached to it. That's pretty much the main thing that ended up shifting this character from like lawful evil. I mean, like he never became good, but like true neutral is probably what he ended the campaign in.
Yeah,
But
not
like,
not necessarily a complete character switch, but enough.
Yeah, but like the whole reason that that happened the way it did is because right around the same time I was in a relationship with somebody who had adopted not adopted, but who had, who now had a foster kid, and we were suddenly thrown into like, hey, what is it going to be like having a kid in my life, and like, am I ready to like actually be a dad?
Mm.
And I was able to kind of work through a lot of that through the game we were playing, through the character I had. And I didn't even realize I was doing that at first until one of my friends mentioned, she's like, oh yeah, this is like a lot with like you and the kid. And it's like, oh shit, it really is, isn't it?
Like, well, it wasn't meant to be, but yeah, I guess now it is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because like, it's something that I mentioned before, and like, character, back when we were talking about character creation and stuff. It's like, there's always a little bit of you in whatever character you're playing, because there has to be, like, the character exists through you. And occasionally that involves, stuff manifesting in the character in ways you don't expect. And in this way, it manifested in the way of like, hey, I was trying to figure out whether or not I would be able to, you know, be in this relationship and have a child. And we were able to, and I was able to work through and process a lot of that through the character, because it was a safe space that I could kind of explore it through.
I don't really have any comeback to that or any addendum to that.
Yeah, and I'm kind of curious though, because like one of the things I was thinking about with this topic, because like I don't experience bleed in my RPGs a lot. When I do, it's kind of like highlight moments or epic moments in the system itself. You haven't been playing all that much,
No, I was
so
gonna say, like, I know with where we've been playing, I've
mm,
definitely not really experienced bleed because the setting that we're in, we've said before, it's more of a popcorn type thing, right? Like you
yeah,
go, you
beer
get
and
your
pretzels game.
exactly. So there's not a huge amount of option or opportunity for bleed, I think. There's definitely
Yeah,
moments where I've looked at the character I'm playing, like I would do this, but the character would do this, so that's what I'm gonna do. But that doesn't necessarily mean that I'm doing it instinctively. I still had to take a step back and actually look at it.
yeah,
So the answer to the question I don't think you asked is no, I haven't really gone through bleed as of yet. Not that it won't happen, but just for the setting we're in, especially I think some of the games have been, oh, that's a cool game, but I'm not super into the setting,
I mean, I
which
know the one you guys are playing right now. For the record, for the audience, I'm currently taking a break from the Comic Hunter group. Not any, negative thing happened. Just
it's you're
rest of
just
my life is
busy as
stupid
fuck.
busy. Yeah,
Yeah,
rest of my life is stupid busy right now. I needed the free time somewhere.
yeah.
But like, part of the reason that I chose now to step back is like, the system that they're playing at the moment seems kind of interesting, but honestly, I'm not all that into it.
It,
And it's
it's
like, hey,
very
this
it's
is
very similar to Pathfinder, but I
yes.
understand why you wouldn't want to be into it. And honestly, if it, funny enough, just with the way that the sessions have been going, there's always been at least one or two people out.
Mm,
Had it had it not been for that, I don't know if I would have been as into the setting either. But well, I'm here. I'll throw a character together, but I don't recall actually doing anything in any of the last few sessions other than maybe I think someone's like, "Oh crap, we missed the sneak roll. What can I try?" "Oh yeah, we forgot you were here." Basically, is how that conversation went. So yes, I have a character in the game. I don't think I've interacted with anyone beyond the "I'm just here."
yeah.
So it's one of those things where I've not really been focused on it as much as I perhaps should be.
Which, and for, the reference for people who might be relatively new to this podcast, Alex works in the shop while we're playing, so it's not like he's just sitting there not paying attention at all. Like, it's usually he's got other stuff he's actively doing, and he gets pulled in whenever he has the mental time for it.
Yeah, and usually earlier in the night, funnily enough, I'm pretty good, or later,
Yeah.
depending on what I've got going on. But yeah, it's very much a case of if I'm not already into the setting, I'm going to be a bit more disconnected anyway, and I just haven't got found that hook yet to get me into the setting.
Yeah, because like when you had your goblin, we had that teeth fixation that hooked
Yep,
you in and hooked you into the other characters, which that worked
exactly.
really well.
It was a fantastically off the cuff moment too, which is what I
And
like.
like that's where the best moments in RPGs come from. Because like yeah, it's you can play systems that try to like codify that more and have it like, hey, this is like where you have your moment. But for the most part, like if you're not open to the randomness that comes through, those interesting moments just aren't going to happen.
No, exactly.
Like that's actually kind of a good point on bleed as well. Where it's if you're if you're not if you're not in a setting where or setting like a if you're not in an environment where you can like sit down and focus and have that engagement, then bleed is a lot less likely to happen, which
Agreed.
not a bad thing. Like bleed isn't. I'm not going to sit here and be like, oh, bleed is, if you haven't experienced bleed, you're not doing it right. Rah, 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 rah. Like that's silly.
I no, I think that your
But
point is valid though, in that depending on what kind of game you're playing, it's something cool that can happen. But if it
yes,
doesn't happen, it's not the end of the world. It doesn't inhibit you from enjoying what you're playing.
no, and like
And
there's I sorry, keep going.
I would say, and it might even be a case of you don't necessarily want to feel what the character's feeling. Maybe you're just, hey, this is what I would do in this situation, and taking a step back is how you would rather play it. And
Yeah,
there's nothing wrong with that. That's totally fine.
and I definitely know, especially like it was a common, I don't want to say joke, but common like idea back in like when Vampire the Masquerade was super popular. Like it was kind of thing of, they were like, oh, they were the role players, like they got really into their characters and all that kind of stuff, which is mostly just a stereotype, because I definitely knew plenty of vampire players who fulfilled the stereotype of it being superheroes with fangs. But it's like stuff like that, they have mechanics built into the system to try to like encourage that more character focused mindset, while like stuff like D&D, very good game, doesn't really have much in the way of mechanics for like your character being a person. Like there's
Right.
nothing to like there's not really much in it. It's like, hey, like this is what your character's like beliefs are, like this is what your character wants to do, and this is how it's like mechanically relevant. It's just, hey, here's your stat block, which for some people that works a lot better for them, even for doing like heavy character stuff, because they want the mechanics to just stay out of the way so they can like
They
role
can
play their
figure out
character
what they
however
want
they
to do.
feel it.
Yeah.
Yeah, me personally, I like a bit of I like a bit of mechanical backing to who my character is, just because like it helps me like when I'm having a moment where it's like, I don't know what this character might do in this situation. Having that mechanical backing, that I can kind of sit there and go, oh right, like he is a sailor, or like he has a short temper, or like that's something that's
Mm.
mechanically
It's something
there
that
that I
you
can lean
can
on if need to.
exactly. Like if you're not sure, like, well, I don't really know what to do here. Wait, what would the character do? What do I have anything here that would give me an idea?
Yeah, and like there's a number of systems that do really interesting things with it. Like there's some that like I'm pretty sure Burning Wheel does this, which we haven't talked about Burning Wheel, and at some point I would love to, because it's fascinating. But it has like your character's beliefs that you codify when you make your character, and like you can change them over time, but like they are like written down mechanical
Would
things, because
would you
if you're
say
doing something,
I
go.
was say, would you say Burning Wheel is an almost underrated RPG system?
Honestly, I'd put it at almost cult classic, because it's one of those things that you either love it or you hate it. Most people, I mean, at least in the RPG circles that I've been through, most people have heard of it, but heard of it in the sense of like, oh, it's that RPG.
Okay.
But yeah, I,
Well,
I would I,
I'll
I
put
would
a I'll
I
put
would
a
love
pin in
to
that thought. But yeah,
yeah, I would
that's
definitely want to do an episode on the Burning Wheel family of games, because I have a few of them on my bookshelf, but they're very heavily into the, at some point I'm going to get to play these. But point that I'm going for is that with the way your beliefs are codified, like if you're doing something that is in line with your beliefs, you actually get mechanical bonuses on succeeding on that.
I like
because like
that
hey like
aspect of things. Yeah.
yeah like if your character like this is more of like a fate type thing, but if your character is like has something that's like hey like I you know I will put my life on the line to defend other people. If you're in a situation where it's like, oh, hey, this guy's going to shoot him and I have a chance to jump in the way, you would get a bonus to succeeding on that because your character has that belief of I will put my I'll put my life in harm's way to protect other people.
Right. That makes sense.
Yeah, and it can get into some really fun. Actually, Fate is a fantastic one for that. I'm not a big fan personally of Fate for myself. Like it doesn't click well for me, but it is a great RPG, and I have friends who swear by it. But like the whole thing is that you have these identifying traits of your character, and it's strongly encouraged because of the way the system is made that these traits should have like negative and positive applications to them. And then whenever it comes up in the game, if it's a positive application, then you can invoke it to get that positive boost out of it. Or if it's coming up in a negative situation, then the GM can be like, hey, so like I will give you a Benny or a token that you can spend elsewhere if your character does this negative thing based on this trait they have. Or you can invoke it yourself and say like, hey, my character like hates cops, and we're talking to this cop that we really need to be nice to. I want to negatively invoke this for a benefit I can use later that'll make the situation worse right now.
I think that's fantastic.
Yeah, it is fascinating, and I love it.
Yeah.
Which is, I wish I liked Fate the system more than I did, because a lot of people love it, and I completely understand that. It just doesn't click for me.
And that can happen. And I think that's ironically part of, I don't want to say being an adult, but maturing or whatever you want to call it, is that you realize that, hey, this thing is really cool. I just don't like it.
Yeah,
And
no,
the amount of books that I've read, I'm like, you know what? I understand why people love this book. I thought it was absolute hot garbage. That doesn't mean I'm going to go about and say, don't read it. It was terrible. It's very much a case of, you know what? Uh, Case in point was Tom Holt's The Eight Reindeer of the Apocalypse. I
that is a
understand
fantastic book name.
it honestly, I picked it up because of that and then found out it was actually the eighth book in a series. Now, do you need to read the other books? Maybe, maybe not. I thought it was more of a Santa Claus versus the Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse style, because that's what I was led to believe based on the blurb. What it actually is, it's more of an office procedural where the people in the office are trying to avert something, and Santa just happens to be there to fight the apocalypse at the same time. I
Huh.
understand why people love it. I really do. It was not for me based on what I was expecting going in,
Yeah.
and the humor was like a slightly less well done Terry Pratchett,
I mean,
which,
yeah, aiming for Terry Pratchett is aiming fairly high.
and I don't even know if he was aiming for Terry Pratchett. That's just how it came off. But I also,
There.
for context, I also thought Douglas Adams was a slightly less well done Terry Pratchett. So
Well, that's gonna
it's
get us
not.
some hate in the comments.
Oh, I'm sure. It's one of those things where I'm like, I recognize that this isn't going to be for me. Just like I recognize that Douglas Adams, while fantastic, isn't
Hmm.
also for me based on what I've read, because I very much was the Terry Pratchett is the best thing that there ever existed, and this style of humor that's almost as good is actually worse than someone that just pays like, oh, we'll do the odd Pratchett moment here and there sort of thing. So
Yeah.
again,
Okay.
I recognize why people love the books or that specific book. It wasn't for me.
Well, that's fair. Like bleed isn't for everybody either. Some people really hate getting that
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 invested.
deep character connection where it's like, hey, I, I don't care if I feel what my character feels. I just want to play the game. For other people, that's all they're aiming for. Like getting those bleed moments is why they're playing, and
Yeah,
that's also fully valid. Like I quite enjoy the bleed moments I do get. I don't actively pursue them, mostly because like the games that we're playing that I find myself playing tend to be with like the larger, more tactical focused groups. So it's just not worth aiming
it's
for most
it's
of the
not
time.
it's not always the kind of thing that you can hope to get the character focus moment in
Yeah.
in like that, because I feel like bleed would almost come more in a character based setting, and I mean that not always in a moment of action where like, well, this is what's going to happen because this makes sense. It's maybe even in more of a, there's a conversation happening and my character is getting really upset because of A, B, and C.
Yeah. No, it's
Again, I'm saying
like
that as someone who hasn't gone through bleed, so
no,
folks,
and
please bear in mind that
it's.
that's an opinion based on nothing.
I mean, most opinions are. Let's be honest. But no, the because like the monthly game I'm in is Pathfinder 2, which is a fairly tactical, heavy, crunchy game. But you know, we've all had some moments of bleed in that game because it's just four of us playing, and we have enough time to kind of let ourselves breathe between the more like crunchy parts of the system where our characters will interact with each other and they'll argue about stuff and they'll disagree about stuff. And there's definitely been some moments where I'm playing with somebody and it's, hey, you are getting very hopped up on about this right now, and like I understand and we're all enjoying it, but at the same time, like, you're getting upset in character, but you're making this player upset out of character because you're being visibly upset to them.
Yeah, yeah, I could
And it's
see
like,
why that would be.
yeah, and it's always kind of funny, like after the big character intense moments happen, where like half of the group is kind of like snaps right back to happy go. I was like, oh man, guys, that was great. Thanks for that. And da 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 da. And it's like, wait, what? Oh, right, bleed.
Oh yeah, I was really upset, but that doesn't mean that everyone else is okay. Let me take a minute to get back to myself.
Yeah, yeah. And it was like, all right, I was like, to take like 30 seconds to just kind of go, okay, back to the game, back to the actual like game part of the game. That was interesting. That was a lot of fun. And like it's happy bleed moments don't happen quite as often as negative bleed moments, like in my experience seeing other people, because like we mentioned kind of something similar at the start of the episode where we wanted to have a more upbeat and happy episode about a more happy topic. It's easy to be negative. It's
It,
it's
it's. I see a sign when I walk down to when I walk down to the shop, and it's just in someone's window.
mm,
And I don't know if you heard my cat, but she just cried in the background. It's in someone's window, and it's oh, how does it go? Choose love because hate is easy.
yeah.
Now it's very specifically in regards to something nothing to do with RPGs, but in general, I think that's a very true statement. Is that it's so easy to be negative because in some ways that when you're positive about something and you're choosing to enjoy it and you're nerding out, and I mean, look at me right now. I'm sat here with a whole bunch of 90s action figures just on my desk. And if someone came like, what are those? You fucking nerd. What, it's easy to make fun of it. Then like, I'm like, hey, you know what? Having a whole bunch of Batman just standing here doing nothing makes me happy. And I enjoy
Mm-hmm.
that. And it's so much
Uh,
easier to be negative about that sort of thing that people enjoy than it is anything else.
when
And
it's a lot, better for everyone involved. With like, oh wow, you have some really interesting figures there. When did
mhm,
you start collecting them? Or like, like why do you collect them in more of an interested way as opposed to a judging way? And it's like,
exactly. Yeah,
yeah,
exactly. So I think it takes an effort to, for most people, initially, it takes an effort to not have a negative reaction for a lot of things. And that's fine. Like that's going to happen, I think, in general,
mm,
especially in the world we live in where we're bombarded with negativity. You've got to choose to,
yeah.
you've got to choose to be positive, which sounds
And it's
so
it's not
cliche,
easy,
which is
but it is.
ironically what I was saying we should do anyway. But again, it's just one of those things like, hey, you know what? You can choose. There's a, probably could almost end it here, would be a nice way, but there's
Mm,
a YouTuber I watch called Justin Scard, and he's gone through some shit. And he says at the end of the day, I can't choose my circumstances, but I can, for the most part, choose my reactions to them. and I choose to see the positive in whatever's happening.
Yeah.
And he called it the quest for positivity. And honestly, it's one of those things where it can be so easy to forget. Like, "Ah, damn it, why is this happening? Okay, well, this is happening, fine, but now it's giving me an opportunity to do this.
And like there's there's definitely stuff to be said about like toxic positivity, but for the most part, yeah, it's worth the effort to try to be positive about things, especially if they're things that, don't really impact you. Like, who
Yeah.
gives a fuck if you want to collect Batman figures and display them? It's something you do that makes you happy. What's the point in being negative about that?
Like I think it's fascinating that you build models. Building models is something that I don't. I tried to build a Batmobile and I built one. I was like, that is the last model I build in a long time.
Oh,
However,
the
you have the patience to do that, and I think that's fascinating. I love that. Just
and I
because
think a
I'm
lot
not
of
going to
fun
be
when
the one to do it doesn't mean that I'm not appreciative of the stuff of the time you put into it.
like I was hanging out with a friend last weekend, and like we are still getting to know each other, and turns out this man is absolutely obsessed with watches. Like, their history, the different makers of them, the different qualities of them. This man can tell you like everything about it. It's kind of impressive, honestly.
And
And
see,
like
like,
I I haven't watched I haven't worn a watch in over a decade. I don't care about watches, but he really loved this topic, and it was so fun to like watch his face light up when he's talking about this stuff. And it would have been so easy to been like, oh, that's weird. Why do you care so much about them? Blah blah blah. But no, it was really fun to listen to him light up and talk about it, and we became much better friends because I was open to listening to him talk about something that made him happy.
do you know what I learned this? Like that lesson,
Mm.
or rather, it really drove it home. Working in the comic shop with the amount of people that are really into magic, and I could not give two shits about Magic the Gathering.
Hmm.
I genuinely could not give two shits. The only reason I would care is if I happen to find a card on the ground. Oh, is this one of those really valuable ones? Maybe I'll look it up. Is the only reason I would actually care about it.
Yeah.
However, the amount of people I've listened to who talk about it because they love it, and I just let them talk. Like I'm not going to say, "Shut up, nerd." I'm aware that right, like I'm in a comic shop. I'm aware this is where you come. It's your safe space. I want you to talk about it. I want you to try and get me interested. It's not going to work, but I want you to
Mm.
try and get me interested because maybe you'll have a moment where you know what? I don't give a shit about watches. I have my Apple Watch. That's what I need. But I appreciate, or I like the fact that you're appreciating and trying to get me into the artwork and the craftsmanship of these analog mechanical things that ultimately I would
Exactly.
find genuinely impressive anyway. So I love when people talk about their passion. It's one of those things where, you know what, maybe I'll get into it. Someone was talking to me about wrestling for years, and I finally said, you know what, maybe I'll watch it again. It's been a long time since I watched it. Well, now look at me, right? So
Yep.
it's one of those things that maybe there's enough of a pun not intended, or whatever, but maybe there's enough of a bleed to what I like currently to what you're trying to get me into that I'll find a common ground. Maybe there's not.
Certainly.
Who knows? But for folks, full clarity for me, the reason I don't give a shit about Magic is I don't want to invest the money into it.
Yeah,
That is the only reason I refuse to care about Magic is I don't want to invest the money into it.
there's a reason people call it cardboard cocaine.
Exactly. Like that's the I love seeing people's reactions when they're opening the packs and they're getting the cool stuff. But I
Hmm.
also know what I'm like as a person. I know I have a very addictive personality. I My wife's like, no, you don't. And then she watched me play chess online where I would be like, oh, one more game. Well, one more game. She's like, Alex, it is 4 a.m. Put the phone away. Yeah, but just one more game. No. So it's one of those things where I get it. Like online chess is completely free. Magic the Gathering is not free.
Mm.
Maybe there's a way to play it for free, but I do not intend to find out, so do not tell me.
I will not.
But it's just one of those things where just because I don't partake in the hobby doesn't mean that it's not a viable and uplifting thing for people. Of course, I'm sure there's always people that get angry at certain things anyway, and that's going to happen. But for the most part, right?
I mean, honestly, I think that's a good place to call it for today. Nice high note.
Yep. Well, in that case, folks, as we've been saying, enjoy the bleed.
Game on.
Yeah.
Roll the dice, let's go! Gather round the table set, maps and minis, no regret. Heroes rise and villains fall, the dice decide the fate of all. From dungeons deep to cosmic skies, at Danko calls, the flames will rise. Sharpen your swords, prepare the show. It's time to shout, ready, now, go! Ready, now, go! Let the story steal the show. Ready to go. Yeah, 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 yeah. Roll for heart and rock the flow. Bards will sing and dragons know the might, the magic, the tales we throw. Ready, not go. When destiny calls and the dice hit the table, the heroes awaken and the nerds are ready. Ready to go! Leopard tails begin to grow. Ready to go! Forge your fate and steal the show. Raise your mugs, let courage flow. Ready, gotta go!
Hey, thanks for watching Board Game today. We always appreciate your views and your support, but there are so many ways for you to support our site. Not only can you do it right here on video, but you can go and check us out at boardgametoday.com where we have more news, reviews, interviews, everything you could ever want. But since you're here, if you could, you can always give us a like, subscribe, or share our videos or watch something else. Is always much appreciated, and get your game on.